You're listening to Sound Money from Casey Research.
Hello and welcome to the Sound Money Show from Casey Research with me, your host Andy Duncan, coming to you from London today in the UK, where it's been a bright sunny day. Today my guest is Jeff Tucker, Executive Editor of Laissez Faire Books and Distinguished Fellow of the Foundation for Economic Education. He's currently in Auburn, Alabama, and he tells me that the weather there isn't too cold, it's just nice and pleasant. Today we'll be talking about Liberty.me, Laissez Faire Books, entrepreneurship, and if we can, we might squeeze in a little bit on Bitcoin. Hello, Jeffrey.
Hello, it's very nice to be here. Thanks for mentioning Liberty.me. It's my new project. It's taken over my life, so of course it's good that you mentioned that.
Fantastic. Now, we'll talk about that in a second, but the last time we spoke together, we were both in the Mediterranean, just off the coast of Bodrum in Turkey, and you have been doing an awful lot since then. Can you tell us about Liberty.me, which seems to be this great initiative?
Well, let's see. How long ago was that? Was that a year ago? A little more than a year ago? A year and a half?
About 18 months or so, I think.
Yeah, this is a kind of a piece of web real estate I've been dreaming about for a couple of years. I'm intrigued at what the digital age has meant to civilization itself. I mean, it's kind of given us a new frontier. It's a world of infinite reproducibility and scalability and technological advance, and it's given human freedom a second chance after we totally botched it over the last 100 years. So I imagined that lovers of liberty could in effect move to a piece of real estate in the cloud. And that's essentially what this is. It provides publishing opportunities, content distribution, social networking on a global scale, beautiful communication tools from encrypted chat to news streams. You know, everything that I've learned in my life as a web developer, I'm pouring into this one project. I dreamed about it more intensely, I guess, this last spring and found some investors in the early fall. And now I've got developers all over the world just pounding away, building this darn thing, which is not a nonprofit. It is a commercial enterprise because I wanted to build in, as part of the structure of the machinery, a North Star of profitability, because I always think that that's actually the most productive and creative technology we have is accounting, and I wanted to be subjected to that balance sheet. So look, this is everything I've ever dreamed of, and I'm pouring myself into it completely. It's my new publishing platform, and we're running an Indiegogo campaign right now, and which is another really cool market tool that's become available for raising capital before launch, and it's going very well. We've got a couple of weeks left.
Is this then going to be the sort of Facebook for libertarians?
Well, you could put it that way, but I'm not seeking to compete with Facebook. I want to have a specialized social network that does more than just social networking. So it's a content provider too. So I've commissioned 50 or 60 guides of applied aspects of liberty, so that we take liberty out of the realm of theory and look at application in economic sense, but also in a personal life sense. And I think this is the new wave of thinking here. It's like the state is not really responding to our begging request to give us our rights and liberties. So we have to do something about this. And I think that something is taking liberty into our own hands. And so I want to crowdsource information about that. But it's also a publishing platform without gatekeepers. I think we need that in our space. I don't much like going to editors and begging them to like my stuff. A lot of times I say things that are a little outrageous, a little edgy, and I don't want to have to rely on an editor to decide that my content is respectful enough to make it live. So with Liberty.me, I can just publish as every single user can just publish within a beautiful space without any gatekeepers, and we're just going to let hopefully order emerge out of chaos. That's really the goal. I want to pour everything I've ever learned. And one of those things I've learned is that websites need to be a two-way, three-way, four-way, five-way, tools of communication. That it's not enough just to have a content delivery service. You really need an intense and human environment for communication so that learning can take place. So as part of that, I've got a really wonderful classroom that's going to be part of the structure, and gorgeous forums and commenting opportunities all over the place. I really want to get everybody engaged. The big problem, it seems to me, we've had over the years is that people go to these conferences. They have a wonderful time. They meet people. They hear great talks, and it's really exciting. And you feel happy. You feel freer. You feel inspired. Then you go home, and then, a few days, a couple of weeks later, certainly a few months later, you're kind of down in the dumps again about the state of the world. So we need a place where we can kind of continue this social environment and this activity and these friendship networks and help them grow and become a permanent part of the way we think and the way we live.
Now, using money as a measurement of account, that's a very Misesian phrase, but you've also used one there, order out of chaos, which is very Hayekian. Now, you're also very involved in entrepreneurship, which is part of Hayek's kind of contribution to the Austrian school. Using your kind of vision of the free market and entrepreneurship, what do you think is going to make people money in the next period, and why do you think it's going to make them money?
Well, look, I mean, over the last 15 years, if it hadn't been for the internet, I think the world would have been in a giant, horrible depression of the worst imaginable sort. I mean, the entire world would have been. So what's really saved our bacon has been the innovations of digital media. And the reason for that is that we get outside the constraints of scarcity in the physical world. We enter into a realm of infinite reproducibility and scalability, really a realm of global sharing and immortal information. And that world of non-scarce goods has changed the equation for us entirely. So I'm just like crazy bullish right now on digital properties and on digital entrepreneurship, because it escapes the great problem of the physical world, which is scarcity. You can produce one good and sell it 1 trillion times. That's some amazing economics that's associated with digital properties in particular. And once you understand that, you begin to realize just how enormously productive this thing is. The digital revolution has been more important for humanity than, I would say, even the Industrial Revolution. And one of the reasons we've not seen the kind of economic growth coming out of this that we might have expected is because the state has become so gigantic in the exact period in which the digital age has sort of begun to mature and thicken and develop. And so taxes are higher, security state is looting ever more, central banks are stealing money through their own printing presses. And as a result, and also regulatory state and welfare states have sort of regimented economic development to such an extent, we should have been seeing 10% growth, throughout the industrialized world over the last 10 years. Instead, we're crawling along at 1%, 2%, and 3% at best, really. And I would ascribe that to the sheer vastness of the public sector and its sort of vicious control of the world.
Do you think then that this digital age and these digital technologies will actually push down government? I mean, they're struggling now as their paper monies are all collapsing. Do you think the digital age will encourage more entrepreneurship and encourage a greater free market?
Well, not only do I think it, I think it's the only way forward. And the reason for it is this: markets are naturally smarter than states anyway. And there is no state in the world that can possibly get hold of the digital sector in the way it wants to. States are necessarily geographically bound and attached to the physical world. They're constrained by that. In the digital realm, there are no more constraints. There are no borders. There are no nation states. Anything that exists can live on a distributed network, and so you can have any one thing, whether it's a CAD file representing a piece of physical property, a film, a text message. Now, in the age of cryptocurrency, it can be actual money itself. All these things can live on distributed networks and live on trillions of individual nodes of existence. Governments can spend every resource and every bit of coercive power they have to stamp them out, but so long as they leave one node living, it can multiply itself again to be trillions of copies all over again. I mean, this is an extraordinary thing for human freedom. The fact that for the first time really in history, we have an infallibly brilliant method for evading state control. That is gigantic. It's huge. It changes everything for us.
Speaking of data networks, are you still involved then with Laissez Faire Books, or has Liberty.me taken over everything?
No. I'm still involved with Laissez Faire Books. I really appreciate the way the Laissez Faire Books, we innovated a new system for distributing texts, books online through a subscription model, and I'm really proud of the work I've done there, because now there's something like 5, 6 really well-known models of sort of ebook distribution through subscription services, but I'm pretty sure that I founded the first one. So I'm very pleased with the way Laissez Faire has done the work that it's done. But at the same time, I wanted to see if I could even push the model much further outside of just subscription model for ebook delivery, which Liberty.me opens up with some 300 texts we're going to immediately make live, and move it over into the realm of a complete human experience. And that's what we're doing. The great thing about the commercial sector is that it unleashes just, every bit of creativity and imagination you can possibly throw at the task. And there's no stops. There's nobody saying, oh, you can't do that. That's going too far. That's not respectable. Or that's a real limit. The only test is the balance sheet, ultimately. And I like to dream, and I like to dream big. And I'm just determined to throw everything into this and make it amazing. And I'll do that so long as the lights say green and not red, essentially.
Now you brought up the last Doug Casey book, Totally Incorrect. Are you bringing out the new one, which I think is called Right on the Money?
I think Laissez Faire might be doing that one. I'm pretty sure of that. But Liberty.me is involved in that project too, because we've pre-bought many of his books. Oh, by the way, his previous book is in many ways a partial inspiration for Liberty.me, because Doug Casey's always been about trying to seek ways to be freer in your own life, not just kind of electing the right people to office or begging regulators to be nicer to you, but really taking the responsibility for your own personal freedom into your own hands. He's been at this for decades, really, and that's a great thing. I mean, he was really out there on the edge, showing people. I mean, he's never trusted politics, right? He's never trusted political systems. He's never trusted nation states. So he was out there doing this kind of stuff long before anybody was thinking about along these lines. And I consider him very much, a source of inspiration for my current project.
Well, I'm sure he'll be pleased about that. I'm actually speaking to him about his book next week. So let's talk about a new book you might be bringing out. Our mutual friend, Stefan Kinsella, tells me you're writing a book on Liberty life hacks. Are you? And if you are, can you tell us what that is?
Well, in fact, the title is the name of the venture. It's Liberty.me, Freedom as a Do-It-Yourself Project. So it's 520 pages. I was just going through it last week. I just saw it in this typeset form. And it explores all the things that you and I have talked about on this interview. All the ways in which markets outsmart states, and how if you just put your mind to it, actually you can be smarter than any government and live a better life. By understanding what the state is, what it does, and figuring out ways around it. I like to think that every system has a flaw, and it's the job of people who love liberty to find the flaw in the state system and exploit it and blast it open and make a new world for ourselves. And I think we can do that. Not only can we do it, we have to do it if we're going to bring about a freer world. It's just not enough to sit around wishing or grousing about government. We've got to take responsibility for our own lives, whether it's in the realm of borrowing or lending or household management or education or health or travel, migration, taxes. Every area of life, we need to bring the subject of human liberty to bear on it. So the whole book is organized as this kind of, I guess you could say, a sort of a poetic encyclopedia of life hacks towards a freer life. And I really believe that, in many ways we experience a lot of tyranny and despotism in our own lives that's not so much of our own choosing, but as a consequence of failing to think through things as clearly as we should. We find ourselves inadvertently wrapped up in the government system of education or finance or migration, or just consumer purchases, without really understanding that we're actually being controlled, that we're being manipulated. And it's true in a whole range of areas, from diet to the way we dress or the way we raise our children or anything. We go along with the system and we find ourselves in trouble. I mean, the state does not mean us well, so we shouldn't obey its plans. Insofar as we can, we should try to escape them. And the escapes are easier than we might think, actually. It's just a matter of being conscious of the possibilities and then acting on them.
There's another man who believes in freedom, and that's Jeff Deist, who's just taken over the presidency of the Von Mises Institute in Auburn, Alabama, where you are today. Now, his job is to help propel Austrian economics into the mainstream against all these power centres you mentioned, against all these educational establishments and governments and so on. As you were so heavily involved with the Mises Institute, I wondered what you thought about his job. Is he going to have an easy time kind of pushing down Keynesianism, or is he going to have a hard time doing that?
Well, he's interviewed me several times for his show, and I've spent a lot of time with him in the past. I have a lot of confidence in him. I think he's a good man with a very good mind. Fortunately, the Mises Institute is working with so many other institutes around the world that are really dedicated to the liberty space, and I think everybody together is going to make a big difference in the world. Look, we're living through a paradigm shift right now. The paradigm of the 20th century was the total state. And I don't mean just Russia or China or Germany or Spain or Italy, but I mean over the whole world. Every government in the world was striving to be total, to control every aspect of life. Now in the 21st century, we are seeing so many anomalies pop up into this paradigm. The stuff no longer works. It doesn't even plausibly account for reality around us. I mean, the old systems of fiscal and monetary management and regulatory control and welfare states have all shown themselves to be gigantic errors. And if I were going to look into the future, I would say that this is going to continue to happen. The paradigm of the 20th century is breaking down. We're entering into a new pre-paradigmatic stage where people are lost and confused about the direction of the future, and people are looking for answers. And I think the answer that we have to point people to is human liberty itself. We need a world that is not controlled from top down, not controlled by states. And this is, I think, the world we're going to discover over the next half century.
I like the idea, actually, of Helio Beltrao, who runs Mises Brazil, where he says liberty is a starfish, and it doesn't matter how much they try to cut it up, it will regrow wherever the kind of pieces are left over. Now, before we finish off, I did want to squeeze in a little bit on Bitcoin. You're quite well known on the kind of interweb as being an evangelist of Bitcoin. I just want to keep this to how much do you think Bitcoin is going to affect us all over the next, say, decade?
I just finished an article on this topic this morning. A very interesting thing happened. A very mainstream retailer named Overstock.com just had it, and it's had the idea of just implementing it as a payment system. And you go to their checkout page, and you've got Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, blah, 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 and then also Bitcoin. And in the first day of business, they did $130,000 in sales they otherwise wouldn't have had. I think that's absolutely brilliant, and other people are looking at that example, and I think they're going to be adopting that. We're going to see the ever more widespread adoption. There's a very interesting thing happening here too, because over the last several years, some very far-seeing, brilliant people have been mining Bitcoin. People who are not part of the establishment, not part of the Forbes 500 or whatever. I mean, this is a kind of a geek set. This is the nerds in high school we used to make fun of, are suddenly emerging as these mega multi-millionaires. Most of them are in secret right now. I think this is the new aristocracy. So we're going to see huge cultural, social shifts as the influence in the entrepreneurial sector, gradually over the next 5 years, falls to this crowd of geeks and nerds, the people who nobody thought would amount to anything, who saw that there was a real future to cryptocurrency. So I think it's going to be gigantic. And it's not for ideological reasons. People will not be adopting Bitcoin because they want to get away from the Fed or from the Treasury or from the nation state or whatever. They're going to adopt it because it's a superior technology to nationalized monies. it's in people's economic interest to do this, and that's why we're going to. All the signs point to the fact that it's just short of being inevitable. We're going to live in a cryptocurrency world, and that cryptocurrency will be entirely private and live on a distributed network, and it could become the new global reserve currency, the new gold, in effect.
These geeks, as you describe them, they sound like the Victorians of the Snow Crash novel by Neil Stevenson. Now, Jeff, it's been great talking to you. Where's the best place for people to find out about you and your work on the internet? Yeah,
I'm really happy for people to go to liberty.me. You can sign up to go on the email list. We're going to be launching in 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. But also you can check out our Indiegogo campaign. I have some funny videos that everybody will enjoy. I really went all out in trying to demonstrate just how serious we are about this project, and serious about making liberty part of people's lives in the future. So you can go to liberty.me and click through the Indiegogo campaign, or just sign up and just keep an eye on me. And I look forward to connecting with everybody in the future in the digital cloud.
I saw a great video of you jumping into some very, very cold water.
So, you heard the language I used after I hit the water, too, I'm sure.
So thank you very much for your time today, Jeff Tucker.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You can subscribe to Sound Money on iTunes or sign up to our subscription service at soundmoneyshow.com, where you can also listen to our growing catalogue of podcasts. These include interviews with Doug Casey, Rick Rule, Harry Dent, Jim Rogers, and many others. I'd like to thank Jeff Tucker for joining us here today, and I'd like to thank you for listening. Until next time, goodbye.